Aggression is the key tool to winning lane in League of Legends, and I'm going to teach you exactly how you should use it so that by the end of this video, you'll be so good that you'll never lose a trade again. Laning is the most important part of any League of Legends match. It's the part of the game where you have the most influence over what happens, and if you want to climb effectively, then your laning is what you have to be working on. Like seriously, if you aren't winning lane almost every game, climbing isn't going to be possible, especially in the lower ranks. And there's only one way to consistently win lane, and that's with well-timed aggression. Not just aggression, but well-timed aggression. Now I know you're tempted to go lock in Yasuo and play aggressive, only to end up doing a 10 death power spike any percent speedrun, but I beg you don't. The reason playing aggressive is so important during lane is because it allows you to generate small leads by either winning trades or denying last hits. And just so we're all on the same page, when I say playing aggressive, I mean standing in a position where you can trade with your opponent if they try and last hit a minion. So I talked about how important timing your aggression is, but how do you time it? There are 5 main situations you'll come across where you'll get an opportunity to play aggressive without putting yourself in too much danger. I'll call those situations the 5 openings. Let's go through them one by one. The first opportunity that I surprisingly don't see many people making use of below Diamond is whenever your minion is dying. Most players, especially those in the lower ranks, will be greeding for last hits that they shouldn't be taking all the time. To take advantage of this, when you see your own minion losing health, you should walk up and look to punish the enemy as they go for that last hit. A lot of champions can't trade back while they auto attack, so a lot of the time it's just free poke. Some champs can though, so be careful of that. In this situation, I can see that this minion is losing health. I walk up to it as it's about to die, then poke Yasuo with my Q when he goes for the last hit. The next opening is much more obvious, and it's whenever you're stronger than the person you're laning against. This could be because you're a higher level, you have more items, or if you're hitting your power spike. But despite how obvious it seems, I do see a lot of lower rank players not taking advantage of their champion's power spikes and level advantages, so make sure you're doing this. The third one is probably the most important, and it's whenever your enemy's abilities are on cooldown. It's especially important against champions that have important big cooldown spells like Blitz with his hook or Syndra with her E. Whenever the enemy blows big abilities like this, you get a small window to walk up and do whatever you want without any risk, and if you aren't taking advantage of these small windows, you're never going to rank up. Knowing the cooldowns of whoever you're laning against can help you with this, but I personally can't be asked to look it up every game, so I just try to remember whether the abilities have long or short cooldowns, and I go from there. In this example, Asol uses his W, so I walk up and start playing aggressive. The cannon minion is dying and he has no safe way to farm it, so I stand on top of it to zone him off. He makes a mistake and walks up to poke me for no reason, so I get a free trade. Obviously this isn't the best example, since you can't rely on people to make these kinds of mistakes, but a decent player still would have lost the cannon minion in this situation and I'd come out with a small advantage, so you can at least see how making use of these openings can lead to you winning lane. The fourth one is pretty simple, and it's whenever you have a health or mana advantage. Playing aggressive in this situation makes the advantage even bigger for you and gives you the chance to get a solo kill as well. And the last one is also pretty simple, but I don't see many lower rank players making use of it, and it's whenever you have the minion advantage. This one mostly applies when you're facing a champion that relies on auto attacks for damage, since having a bigger minion wave basically means that the enemy can't auto attack you, since if they do, the minions will focus them and they'll be guaranteed to lose the trade. These 5 openings make up the foundation of any interaction in laning phase, and while they are mainly indicators of when to play aggressive, they have another use that's arguably even more important than that. And that other use is as an indicator of when to play safe. But wait a sec, that doesn't make sense. An opening is an opportunity to play aggressive, so how can it help you play safe? Well, when you see a Smurf play in the lower ranks, you'll notice they often kill the enemy laner multiple times throughout laning phase, and that's by exploiting these openings. So why is it that you don't see many solo kills in the higher ranks or in pro play? That's because the higher rank players realise something that you may or may not have realised as well by now. The openings apply to you too. Not only do you have to be aware of when you can abuse these openings against the enemy, but you also need to be aware of when the enemy can abuse these openings against you. And no matter how good you are at League, you will eventually have to give your opponent an opening. When it comes to this, there are 2 main things you have to think about. Firstly, when do you give them the opening? And secondly, when they get an opening, what do you actually do? As for the first question, you can't always control when you give your opponent an opening, but you can avoid giving unnecessary ones at bad times. This is hard for me to explain with words, so I'll just use an example. If you were playing Syndra, a good time to throw out your E would be after clearing the minions. You'll be giving the enemy an opening to play aggressive since your E will be on cooldown, but since there are no minions to farm, you can walk away and you won't lose anything for it. This is an example of a good time to give your opponent an opening. On the other hand, if you throw your E as a massive wave is crashing into your tower, you must walk up to farm the wave, and since you won't have your E to defend yourself, you'll be susceptible to a dive. This is an example of the worst possible time to give your opponent an opening, for pretty obvious reasons, and it could have easily been avoided. There's an infinite number of situations that you could run into where this applies, but in general, avoid giving up openings that you don't need to give up when there's minions for you to farm. Last hit should always be your priority over trades. As for what to do when your opponent gets an opening, the answer is pretty simple, and it's play safe. The goal of playing aggressive is to poke as much as possible while denying as many last hits as you can. Based on that, the goal of playing safe should be the complete opposite. Take as little damage as possible while trying to get as many last hits as you can. Whenever you're laning and one player gets an opening, you'll always be looking to achieve one of these two goals, and your opponent will be looking to achieve the other one. So how do you assure that you achieve your goal and that they don't achieve theirs? Well, there are quite a lot of factors to think about, but in the end it all boils down to one main thing, and that's reading your opponent. Reading your opponent is by far the hardest part about any interaction in lane, as there's pretty much no limit to how good you can be at it. Not only that, but being good at this skill is what separates good players from great players, so it's pretty important that I go over it. The two goals I was talking about a second ago are essentially the key to reading your opponent. Whenever there's an opening in your lane, whether you're the one playing aggressive or safe, you always want to start by thinking, what's the best possible outcome for the aggressor? If your goal is to play safe, you need to come up with a plan that will stop that outcome from happening. On the other hand, if you're the aggressor, you want to consider all the things the other player can do to stop you from reaching that outcome, and try to reach the outcome anyway. This is kind of hard to explain in words, so let's go over an example. This clip is from a streamer who is arguably one of the best non-pro solo queue players in Korea. I think his name's Talk It Out, but I could be wrong as I don't speak Korean. In this situation, he can make use of the second opening I talked about, as he's way stronger than Syndra with these current items. This means that he's the aggressor, and the best possible outcome for him as the aggressor is to R forward and land his bubble on Syndra so he can chunk her. In order to do this, he first has to clear the backline of caster minions with his Q. Now his plan is simply to R forward and throw out his bubble, but the Syndra, whose goal is to play safe, knew that would be Zoe's best possible outcome, so she stunned Zoe to stop the bubble from hitting her. Syndra came out on top in this trade because she was able to figure out what Zoe's best possible outcome would be and stop it from happening. But it's not over just yet. Because Syndra's E is now on cooldown, Zoe can take advantage of the third opening and she continues to play aggressive. Zoe's plan from here is to deny these three last hits at the front, and if Syndra walks up to take them, Zoe will nail Syndra with the bubble. Syndra however wants the last hits. So her plan is to hit Zoe with Q and W so she can proc Phase Rush. That way she can dodge the bubble and get the minions safely. She successfully procs Phase Rush, but Zoe is one step ahead. She doesn't take the bait, she waits for the Phase Rush to run out, and then she lands the bubble for free. Zoe ends up winning the trade by a landslide and denying all three minions. The key takeaway from this is that because the Zoe player spotted the opening to play aggressive and thought one step ahead, he was able to build up a small lead. The Syndra also spotted Zoe's opening, but since she didn't respect it enough and tried to play safe, she ended up behind. If this Zoe player can use the 5 openings to build up small advantages like this against high challenger players in Korea, imagine what you can do to the people in your rank with it. As long as you play aggressive consistently at the right moments and respect the openings that the enemy have on you, you'll be stomping lane every game. Up on the screen I've left a summary of everything I've said in this video pretty much. I'm not sure if it was really needed, but you can take a screenshot of it if you want. Subscribe to see when the next episode's out, and also check out my other video where I talked about how I climbed to Masters so fast. In a bit lads.